Hey everyone, I'm Miles Ellison.
And I'm Cambria Shaw. You hear the word Frankenstein, and, your brain automatically cues up the caricature.
Oh, absolutely. The lumbering giant, the green skin.
Yeah, the flat head, the bolts sticking out of the neck. We all have this expectation of a really simple black and white movie monster.
Right, which is largely thanks to Boris Karloff in 1931.
Exactly. But we aren't looking at a monster movie today. We're really looking into a mirror. Today, we are tearing up that cartoon version of Frankenstein and diving deep into the real, devastating 1818 text by Mary Shelley.
Because beneath that pop culture veneer, there is this incredibly complex reflection of grief, of unchecked ambition, and really the catastrophic fallout when we utterly abandon the things we bring into this world.
And for you listening right now, if you've ever wondered why this story has survived for over 2 centuries, well, we're going to unpack all of that. It's a deep dive into the emotional core of the story.
Yeah, because that cartoon image has done, a tremendous disservice. You uncover a narrative that is just deeply entrenched in the cutting-edge science of the 1800s and the crushing realities of human isolation, plus a warning about scientific responsibility that feels, honestly, uncomfortably relevant right now.
Uncomfortably relevant is the perfect way to put it. But to decode the text, you can't just start in the laboratory, right? We have to start with the creator, a woman whose entire existence was defined by the very thing her protagonist is trying to conquer.
Right, death.
Death. Mary Shelley was born Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin in London in 1797, and she essentially entered the world through death.
Yeah, her origins are incredibly tragic.
Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, who was, the foundational feminist philosopher, the one who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women. And her father was William Godwin, a highly influential, radically rationalist political philosopher.
So she was basically born into philosophical royalty.
Totally. But her mother died of puerperal fever, childbed fever, just 11 days after Mary was born.
And the psychological weight of that, it really cannot be overstated. Mary grew up in a house where her mother was essentially a ghost.
A famous ghost, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Revered by her father and by society, but physically absent. And William Godwin raised her in this environment of intense intellectual rigor, but he was famously mostly distant.
Right, like he just didn't do warmth.
No, he didn't really believe in the traditional expressions of familial affection. And then when Godwin remarried, Mary found herself even more isolated. She has a notoriously fraught relationship with her stepmother, Mary Jane Clairmont.
Which led to this incredibly Gothic childhood behavior. She would literally go to the St. Pancras churchyard and read books while sitting on her mother's grave.
It's such a striking image. She learns to read and think in a graveyard.
Just communicating with a dead mother through the text left behind. And, the trauma just compounds as she enters adulthood. She falls in love with the romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley,
Who was already married at the time.
Right, minor detail. So they elope in 1814, which sets off a massive societal scandal. She gets completely disowned by her father, and over the next few years, she just experiences a staggering sequence of losses.
It's honestly hard to fathom.
It really is. She gives birth to a premature daughter who dies just weeks later. Then she has a son, William, and a daughter, Clara, both of whom will die in early childhood.
So by the time she is actually sitting down to write Frankenstein, she's experienced more intimate proximity to death than most people endure in a lifetime.
Which brings us to that famous summer of 1816.
The year without a summer.
Yeah, triggered by the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia, which cast this massive ash cloud over Europe. It caused endless rain and gloom.
Perfect weather for a ghost story.
Exactly. So Mary, Percy, Lord Byron, and John Polidori are trapped indoors near Lake Geneva reading German ghost stories, which prompts Byron's famous challenge, right, to write their own supernatural tales.
Right, the competition that birthed Frankenstein.
But this is where I want to reframe the entire genre of this novel for you listening, because the literary establishment often treats Frankenstein as, like, the birth of science fiction or a hallmark of Gothic horror. But look at the mechanism driving the plot.
The desire to conquer death.
Yes. We have a creator who is obsessed with reversing irreversible loss. Given that Mary Shelley had lost her mother days after her birth and had recently held her own dying infant in her arms, it seems completely inadequate to just call this horror.
I see what you're saying.
Isn't this novel actually a grief-stricken mother's ultimate fantasy? Like an exploration of the most agonizing question a grieving parent can ask: what if death could simply be undone?
That's a really powerful framework because it transforms Victor Frankenstein from a stereotypical, mad scientist into an avatar for extreme human desperation.
Exactly. He's not just crazy.
Right. When Victor stands over his laboratory table, he isn't just trying to make a monster for the sake of it. He is trying to hack the biological code of mortality itself. And Mary wasn't writing this in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
She poured her own traumatic miscarriages and infant losses into the text, sure, but she combined that profound emotional grief with the very real, very empirical scientific debates of her immediate circle.
Which brings us to the science. Because Mary and Percy were deeply embedded in the scientific zeitgeist of the late 1700s and early 1800s. And the ultimate obsession of that era was electricity. We have to look at Luigi Galvani.
He's the absolute linchpin for this story. He was an Italian physician who discovered in the 1780s that if you applied a spark of electricity to the exposed sciatic nerve of a dissected frog, the dead legs would violently kick and spasm.
Which is just visually insane to think about.
It was revolutionary. He called it animal electricity. He genuinely believed he had discovered the innate life force itself, like a fluid inherent in biological tissue.
And the debates that sparked were vicious. You had Alessandro Volta arguing that the electricity wasn't coming from the frog at all, but from the metals Galvani was using to touch the frog.
Which is actually what led Volta to invent the first battery, just to prove Galvani wrong.
Spite is a great motivator for invention. But the idea of galvanism just caught fire, and it wasn't just frogs anymore.
No, this escalated rapidly into human experimentation. Galvani's nephew, Giovanni Aldini, actually took this science on tour.
Like a rock band.
Basically. In 1803, in London, Aldini performed a very public demonstration on the corpse of an executed murderer named George Forster.
This part is so wild.
He applied conductive rods to Forster's face and body, and the accounts from the time are just horrifying. When the current was applied, Forster's jaw began to quiver. His left eye actually opened, and one of his arms rose and clenched its fist.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Some onlookers genuinely thought Forster was being brought back to life right there on the table.
I want you to imagine that for a second. Imagine if tomorrow an artificial intelligence company didn't just pass the Turing test, but the servers literally started bleeding.
That is a terrifying analogy.
But it fits. That sudden, nauseating realization that the boundary between machine and biology has completely evaporated, and you've crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. That is what seeing a dead human eye pop open on a metal table felt like in 1803.
It really wasn't parlor magic to them. To Mary Shelley and her circle, this was verifiable, peer-reviewed science.
Right, Percy Shelley was fanatical about it.
Oh, totally. During his time at Oxford, his rooms were reportedly just filled with galvanic batteries, electrical machines, and chemical apparatuses. Furthermore, they were heavily tracking the rumors surrounding Erasmus Darwin, Charles Darwin's grandfather.
Right, the vermicelli experiment.
Yes. He was allegedly experimenting with reanimating microscopic dead matter, the famous vermicelli in a glass case that Mary explicitly references in her 1831 introduction. So the intellectual air Mary breathes was just saturated with the terrifying premise that science was on the verge of completely conquering death.
But I want to challenge the premise that Victor's pursuit of this science is purely arrogant. Because, we often frame Victor's ambition as this toxic, hubristic domination of nature. But if we strip away the hindsight of what actually happens in the novel, isn't Victor just trying to cure death?
It's a fair point.
He specifically says he wants to banish disease from the human frame. In a historical era where infant mortality is astronomical, where Mary Shelley herself is losing children to easily preventable diseases by modern standards, isn't Victor actually the most moral person in the room until the experiment goes wrong?
Well, the intention to banish disease is undeniably noble, sure, but we have to look at his methodology and the psychological shift that occurs within him over time.
Okay, how so?
Victor's journey begins with the ancient alchemists Cornelius Agrippa Paracelsus. He is initially looking for the elixir of life, which is a somewhat mystical, holistic approach to immortality.
Right, it's very romanticized.
Exactly. But when he arrives at the University of Ingolstadt, that mystical foundation is violently replaced by the cold, empirical domination of modern chemistry.
The lecture by Professor Waldman, this is the catalyst for everything.
Precisely. Professor Waldman doesn't just teach chemistry. He preaches this doctrine of absolute power over nature. Waldman tells his students that modern scientists, quote, penetrate into the recesses of nature and show how she works in her hiding places. He says they can command the thunders of heaven, mimic the earthquake, and mock the invisible world.
The language there is incredibly aggressive. Penetrate into the recesses of nature. Nature, in the Romantic tradition, is almost always personified as female mother nature. Waldman is essentially teaching a science of violation.
And Victor fully internalizes that. He doesn't just want to cure disease anymore. He wants to bypass the female role in reproduction entirely.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He wants to be the sole creator of a new species. He explicitly states, a new species would bless me as its creator and source. Many happy and excellent natures would owe their being to me. No father could claim the gratitude of his child so completely as I should deserve theirs.
So the noble pursuit of medicine has just completely mutated into a god complex.
Completely. He isn't seeking to save lives. He is seeking worship.
Which explains why his methodology becomes so horrifyingly isolated. Because he spends 2 years in Ingolstadt completely cutting himself off from everyone. His father, his adopted sister and fiancée Elizabeth, his best friend Henry Clerval, he just stops writing letters.
He isolates himself entirely.
And he spends his nights in charnel houses, dissecting rooms, and slaughterhouses, literally hoarding human and animal remains. And here's a detail I always forget. He builds the creature to be 8 feet tall simply because working on minute human-sized blood vessels and nerves was too slow for his manic obsession.
Right, he was impatient, and that obsession just blinds him to the grotesque reality of what he's actually building. He claims he selected features that were beautiful.
Beautiful.
I know, but on that dreary night in November, when he infuses the spark of being into the lifeless thing at his feet, the delusion just shatters.
It's such an iconic scene. By the glimmer of a half-extinguished candle, he sees the dull yellow eye of the creature open. The creature breathes hard. A convulsive motion agitates its limbs, and instantly Victor is struck with breathless horror and disgust.
He is repulsed by his own work.
The yellow skin barely covering the muscles and arteries, the shriveled complexion, the straight black lips. Victor doesn't stay to observe. He doesn't try to communicate. He literally runs out of the room. He abandons his creation the very second it draws breath.
And this is the central crime of the novel. The tragedy isn't the scientific creation of life. The tragedy is the absolute emotional abandonment of a child. Victor creates life, but he completely divorces himself from the responsibility of care. If we view Victor as a parent, he commits the ultimate act of neglect.
And the psychological whiplash here is fascinating. He runs to his bedroom and he falls into this deeply disturbed sleep where he has a nightmare that honestly perfectly diagnoses his crime.
Oh, that nightmare is so telling.
He dreams he sees Elizabeth walking in the streets. He kisses her, but as he does, her lips become the color of death. She transforms into the rotting corpse of his dead mother, and he sees grave worms crawling in the folds of her burial shroud.
That nightmare is a brilliant piece of subconscious insight from Mary Shelley. By attempting to unnaturally circumvent death, Victor has destroyed the natural order of life. His ambition threatens all natural familial bonds, which is exactly what happens in the waking world.
Because he wakes from this nightmare, and the creature is standing over his bed.
Yes.
The creature is holding up the bed curtain, uttering inarticulate sounds, and reaching a hand out toward Victor. It's the exact behavior of a newborn baby reaching for its parent.
It just wants connection.
And Victor runs away again. He spends the night pacing in the courtyard. I mean, this completely reframes how we view the mad scientist trope. Victor spends 2 years digging up graves to stitch together a son who will worship him, and the second the newborn reaches out for a hug, Victor abandons it because it doesn't look like an oil painting.
It's pathetic, really.
Victor Frankenstein isn't just a flawed genius. He is the ultimate deadbeat dad.
He is. He is entirely governed by aesthetic prejudice and cowardice. The novel repeatedly emphasizes that Victor fails because he lacks the moral fortitude to nurture what he has brought into existence.
Yeah.
And by running away, Victor forces the narrative to shift. We are compelled to ask, what happens to the abandoned child left alone in the dark?
And the shift in perspective is where Mary Shelley's genius truly shines. Because we eventually hear the creature's own account of his early days, and it completely subverts the expectation of a monster.
Completely.
He isn't born with innate malice. He wakes up cold, hungry, frightened, and just overwhelmed by light and sound. He wanders into the forest. He is a terrified infant trapped in a terrifying 8-foot-tall body.
Mary Shelley is deeply engaging with John Locke's philosophical concept of the tabula rasa, or the blank slate.
Right, the idea that we are born neutral.
Exactly. Locke argued that human beings are not born with innate ideas or inherent evil. Our minds are blank slates, and our character is entirely shaped by sensory experience and our environment. The creature is the ultimate test case for this theory.
He starts learning through primal discovery, like he finds a fire left by wandering beggars. He realizes it provides incredible warmth, but when he touches the live embers, he cries out in pain.
And fire's the perfect symbol here.
Right, it represents the duality of knowledge. It can provide life-saving warmth and civilization, but if handled recklessly, it burns you, which is exactly what Victor did with the fire of scientific knowledge.
The creature's education rapidly accelerates when he finds a small hovel attached to a cottage. He hides there for months, secretly observing the de Lacy family through a crack in the wall.
And the de Lacys are just this impoverished but deeply loving family. A blind old father, his son Felix, and daughter Agatha. The creature watches them share food, play music, and demonstrate profound affection for each other.
And because they are sad about their poverty, the creature secretly chops wood for them at night and leaves it at their door.
He's acting out of pure benevolence.
He is. And by listening to them, he slowly learns language. He learns the abstract concepts of good, dearest, and unhappy. But this education is a double-edged sword. As he learns about human society, he learns about wealth, high descent, and family lineage.
He realizes he has none of those things.
Exactly. He realizes he is an absolute anomaly.
His intellectual awakening brings existential agony. And this is just compounded when he finds a portmanteau in the woods containing 3 books, which become basically his primary curriculum: The Sorrows of Werther, Plutarch's Lives, and crucially, John Milton's Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost is the heavyweight here. The creature reads this epic poem about God, Satan, Adam, and Eve, and he constantly compares himself to the figures in Milton's work. He notes that Adam came from God as a perfect creature, guarded by the special care of his creator, allowed to converse with superior beings. But the creature is wretched, helpless, and alone.
He literally tells Victor later, "I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed."
It's heartbreaking. He understands that he was born with a capacity for immense love, but the total deprivation of that love, his absolute isolation, is filling him with the bitter envy of Satan. He possesses a highly articulate, deeply sensitive mind, which means he is fully capable of understanding exactly how much he has been robbed of.
And the final nail in the coffin of his innocence is when he finds papers in the pocket of the coat he took from Victor's lab. It's Victor's scientific journal.
Oh, this scene is so painful.
The creature reads the minute, detailed descriptions of his own creation. He reads the language of profound disgust his father used to describe him. He cries out, "Hateful day when I received life, accursed creator. Why did you form a monster so hideous that even you turn from me in disgust?"
Imagine the psychological annihilation of that moment. To possess empirical proof that the very being who gave you life views you as a loathsome abortion.
It's devastating. And it isn't just Victor. Every attempt the creature makes to integrate into society is met with extreme, unprovoked violence.
Right. He tries to speak to the blind old man de Lacy, hoping that without the prejudice of sight, the man will judge him on his gentle words.
And it briefly works. The blind man is kind.
But then Felix returns, sees the creature kneeling at his father's feet, and brutally beats him with a stick.
And later, the creature actually saves the little girl from drowning in a river, dragging her to safety. And the girl's guardian responds by shooting the creature in the shoulder with a hunting rifle.
The environmental conditioning is complete at that point. The creature learns that no matter how articulate he is, no matter how benevolent his actions are, humanity will only ever respond to his physical form with lethal violence. The tabula rasa has been completely overwritten with trauma.
Which forces a very uncomfortable question for you, the listener. If society relentlessly treats you like a violent monster, violently rejecting every attempt you make at connection, at what point does it become inevitable that you oblige them?
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. The creature declares everlasting war against the human species, but specifically against his creator. His immense capacity for love completely inverts into an immense capacity for vengeance.
And the pivot from tragic victim to active antagonist happens in the woods near Geneva. The creature encounters a young boy and thinks that perhaps the child is young enough to be free of societal prejudice. He tries to take the boy, hoping to raise him as a companion.
But the boy screams, calls him an ugly wretch, and threatens him by saying his father is M. Frankenstein.
Hearing that name is the trigger. The boy is William, Victor's younger brother. The creature strangles him. He says, "I too can create desolation."
And then he takes a locket from the dead boy and slips it into the pocket of Justine Moritz, a sleeping servant girl, framing her for the murder.
It's so calculated.
Justine is tried and executed. Victor knows creature did it, but he remains completely silent because he's afraid people will think he's crazy. 2 innocent people are dead, and Victor just wrings his hands in silence.
Victor's cowardice continually compounds the tragedy. This guilt drives Victor into the Alps, up onto the glacier of Montagnard, which is where creator and creation finally have their confrontation.
Yes, the glacier scene.
And the creature does not attack Victor physically. Instead, he presents a highly rational, chillingly calm ultimatum.
I am malicious because I am miserable. That line is the thesis statement of the creature's existence. He tells Victor, "Make me happy and I shall again be virtuous."
It's such a simple demand.
Right. His demand isn't for power or wealth. He demands that Victor build him a female mate, a creature with the same defects, as hideous as himself, so he won't be utterly alone. If Victor does this, the creature promises they will banish themselves to the vast wilds of South America, far from human contact.
And Victor reluctantly agrees, understanding he owes his creation at least the possibility of happiness. He travels to the desolate Orkney Islands in Scotland to build the female. But as he is assembling the second body, he begins to heavily debate the geopolitical and biological consequences of what he is doing.
We have to bring Thomas Malthus into this,
Cool.
because Mary Shelley had read Malthus's essay on the principle of population, published in 1798. Malthus argued that populations grow exponentially, but food supplies only grow arithmetically, inevitably leading to famine and disaster.
And Victor starts doing the Malthusian math. Victor fears that even if the two creatures go to South America, they might reproduce. He envisions a race of devils that would propagate across the earth and eventually outcompete or destroy humanity. He also realizes the female creature hasn't made any promises. She might despise her mate. She might hate humanity even more than he does.
And as Victor is spiraling through these worst-case scenarios, he looks up and sees the creature staring at him through the window by the light of the moon with a ghastly grin. In a panic, Victor tears the half-finished female to pieces right in front of him.
A brutal moment.
But I have to push back here. Literary critics often frame this as Victor's one moment of noble, self-sacrificing heroism, like sacrificing his own safety to save future humanity. But is he actually being a hero, or is he just terrified of the monster looking at him, using Malthusian overpopulation as a convenient intellectual excuse to avoid doing something he finds disgusting?
That is highly debatable, whether Victor acts out of pure altruism. The text describes a madness coming over him when he destroys the mate. It is a visceral, panicked reaction to the creature's gaze, rather than a calm, ethical calculus.
It's totally reactionary.
Right. By destroying the mate, Victor guarantees the destruction of his own family, prioritizing a hypothetical future threat over the very real, immediate lives of those he supposedly loves.
And the retaliation is swift and absolute. The creature breaks into the hut and delivers the most chilling threat in the novel. I will be with you on your wedding night.
And Victor's narcissism in interpreting this threat is just astounding.
It really is.
He assumes the creature intends to kill him on his wedding night, completely failing to understand the creature's methodology. The creature isn't trying to end Victor's life. He wants Victor to experience the exact same agonizing isolation that he endures.
The collateral damage escalates so quickly. The creature murders Victor's best friend, Henry Clerval. Victor is accused, goes mad with fever, is cleared, and returns to Geneva to marry Elizabeth.
The dread leading up to the wedding is suffocating.
On the wedding night, at an inn, Victor is armed to the teeth, patrolling the hallways, leaving Elizabeth alone in the bridal chamber. He hears a scream, rushes in, and finds Elizabeth lifeless on the bed. The creature has killed the bride, exactly as Victor killed the creature's bride.
An eye for an eye. And Victor's father, Alphonse, dies of grief shortly after. Victor's entire support system is annihilated, and this brings the narrative full circle.
They have nothing left.
Exactly. Victor's choice strips away everything. Both creator and creation now exist purely for mutual hatred. This dark obsession leads them on a relentless chase northward, bringing us to the frame narrative of the novel, the Arctic ice.
The frozen wasteland. The structure of this novel is just brilliant. We don't start in Geneva. We start on a ship in the Arctic Ocean, trapped in the ice, captained by Robert Walton. Walton is writing letters to his sister back in England. His crew rescues a dying Victor Frankenstein off a floating piece of ice, and Victor tells Walton this entire story.
And the Arctic is not just a geographic location. It is the ultimate psychological mirror. The frozen, barren, hostile environment perfectly reflects the total emotional sterility and deadened humanity of both Victor and the creature by the end of their lives.
That's so bleak.
But Walton is more than just a recording device for Victor's story. He is a direct parallel to Victor.
Right, because the pursuit of the Northwest Passage was basically the space race of the 19th century. Walton is intensely ambitious. He talks about treading land never before imprinted by the foot of man. He's willing to risk the lives of his entire crew for glory and knowledge. And, like the creature in Victor, he is deeply lonely. He writes to his sister that he bitterly feels the want of a friend.
Victor recognizes himself in Walton. He sees the exact same dangerous ambition that destroyed his own life. Victor explicitly tells his story as a cautionary tale, urging Walton to learn from his disasters. And yet, the irony of Victor's character remains intact right to the bitter end.
It's staggering. The ship is trapped in ice. The sailors are freezing and dying. They mutiny, demanding that if the ice breaks, they abandon the mission and return home to their families. Victor, literally on his deathbed, gives them a fiery speech shaming them.
He does.
He tells them they set out for a glorious enterprise, that they should be more than men and not return with the stigma of disgrace. He learns absolutely nothing. He is still prioritizing the glorious pursuit of knowledge over human life.
It is the ultimate proof of his unyielding hubris. Walton, however, proves he is not Victor. When the ice finally breaks, Walton yields to his crew's demands. He chooses life over glory and agrees to head south.
A rare moment of sanity.
Victor, his body finally giving out, passes away, but Mary Shelley doesn't end the narrative with Victor's death.
No, she ends it with the creature. Walton hears a noise in the cabin, goes in, and finds the gigantic, horrifying creature standing over Victor's coffin. But the creature isn't gloating. He is weeping.
The creature's final monologue is a masterpiece of tragic realization. He explains to Walton that his vengeance brought him zero satisfaction. He says, "Think you that the groans of Clerval were music to my ears."
Wow.
He explains that he was wrenched by misery to vice and it caused him unimaginable torture. He tells Walton, "You hate me, but your abhorrence cannot equal that with which I regard myself."
With Victor dead, the creature's only tether to the world, even one forged in hatred, is gone. He promises to travel to the furthest northern extremity, build a funeral pyre, and burn his own body to ashes so that his remains can never be studied or replicated by another ambitious scientist. He jumps out the cabin window onto an ice raft and is borne away by the waves, lost in darkness.
It leaves us with a devastating conclusion about humanity. By the end of this journey, the patched-together corpse made of slaughterhouse parts demonstrates far more genuine remorse, self-awareness, and emotional depth than the wealthy, educated human scientist ever did.
Which brings us to the ultimate question of the text. Who is the real monster? Is it the creature who was abandoned, abused, and violently beaten by society until he broke? Or is it the man who arrogantly stole the fire of creation and then refused to take responsibility for the flames?
That leads directly to the novel's full title, right?
Right.
Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. In Greek myth, Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, and Zeus punished him by chaining him to a rock where an eagle ate his liver every day.
That cheerful story.
Very. Shelley is explicitly warning us about the cost of stealing divine fire without the wisdom to manage it.
And it's worth noting how Mary Shelley's own perspective on this warning shifted. There are two major editions of the text, the original 1818 version we focused on, and a heavily revised 1831 edition.
The differences are profound. In 1818, the novel is a treatise on free will. Victor makes explicit, selfish choices and faces the consequences. But by 1831, Mary had lost Percy to drowning. She had lost almost everyone she loved. Her worldview had darkened significantly.
She had been through so much.
In the 1831 text, Victor speaks much more like a man doomed by an unavoidable deterministic fate, a victim of the stars rather than a victim of his own choices.
But the core warning remains violently relevant regardless of the edition. Frankenstein is not an anti-science novel. It is an anti-apathy novel. It argues that if you have the power to create, you must have the moral fortitude to nurture and protect that creation.
The technological parallels today are just inescapable. We are engineering artificial intelligence systems whose decision-making processes we cannot fully map. We are experimenting with CRISPR gene editing. We are geoengineering the climate. The questions Mary Shelley asked in 1818 are the exact questions we are failing to answer today.
We are still trying to play God. Mary Shelley is reaching across 2 centuries to grab us by the shoulders and ask, are we prepared to take responsibility for what we are inventing right now? Or are we going to build our modern miracles, realize they're complicated and dangerous, and just run out of the room?
The true horror of Frankenstein isn't the monster. The true horror is the absolute failure of empathy when it is most desperately needed.
Think about the systems, the cutting-edge technologies, or even the relationships we are building in our modern society. What creatures are we currently bringing to life, only to abandon them because we don't fully understand them or because they demand too much of us? And what happens when those abandoned creations finally realize that we have left them behind in the dark?
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Keep exploring, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Stay lit.